All right, there we go. And please forgive me for not gonna show my face tonight. I'm gonna get my hair done one of these days. So
It's okay. I'm a mess, so it's okay.
I'm gonna look a little bit better on the weekend. All right, good evening, and welcome again to Old Testament. So just a couple reminders, a couple of reminders. I graded the midterms. Everybody check your grades. There's one student, I need you to check your grade. It seemed like something happened to your attachment. So please make sure you check the grade and any comments that I made. So there's one student, it seemed like your attachment did not go through. Please make sure you respond to my message. Also, your midterm grades are in, and I submitted those, I want to say Monday. Uh, Another reminder, I'm going to put this in the chat. Make sure, excuse me, I'm gonna put this in your announcements. Make sure you check your email. The school, not me, has a survey that goes out every semester to the students, and there's a class survey that they need you to fill out. If you don't see it, please check your email, but I'm just going to send a reminder. I do not send it out. It's not from me, it's from the school. So it's a link that's coming from the school, and it should be in your email. You can fill that out. This week, I want you to make sure that you go to your discussion post. There is, and I don't have it on the screen, but there is a story that you're going to read in the book of Numbers that deals with women. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can open this up. Oh, no, stop. Let me hit stop share. Stop share. Okay. See if I can get it up here. Right. Oh, and sorry about that, Come I got a lot of different screens going on up here. But I just wanted to make sure I get it out there. Let me make sure I get it. We're in Deuteronomy. No, excuse me. No, we're not. We're in Numbers this week. And just a couple of things I want to remind you. All right. So your discussion question, let me see if I can pull this up on our screen. Yeah. Your discussion question is question 5 on page 160. What do the portraits of women in the book of Numbers suggest about the role of women in ancient Hebrew times? In order to answer this, I want you to read in the Old Testament Bible, Numbers, go to chapter 27. Numbers chapter 27. And you know what? I didn't put the verses. And I will update. Let me see if I can update that right now. It's Numbers chapter 27. And it's going to be verses 1 through 11. Let me see if I can get that. Can y'all see my? Yeah, there you go. Okay, so once again, it's Numbers chapter 27. And that's going to be verses 1 through 11. 1 through 11. It's a really cool story to read. We might get a chance to get to it tonight, but it's a really good story to read about the daughters of Zelophehad. Zelophehad. I want you to read up that story about the daughters of Zelophehad. And I want you to use that story in essence to help you answer that question about how women were viewed in the Old Testament. Okay, so they did a really, really brave thing. I'm not going to give it away, but they did something really brave in that story. So tonight we are going to be in the book of Numbers. Just the highlight for next week, we're like moving really fast. So next week I'm going to record a video for you because next Thursday, yeah, right? Yeah, next Thursday is Thanksgiving, and nobody's going to be thinking about this class next week. We're celebrating, and I hope that you have a great Thanksgiving. So I will have a video recording for you for next week, and I just want you to enjoy your families. All right, let's talk about the book of Numbers tonight. Okay. All right. So we're still in the Pentateuch. There's so much that we just have to cram here, but in the book of Numbers, this is the fourth book of the Pentateuch or the Torah. So remember, the first 5 books of the Bible, that's the Torah or the Pentateuch. This story in the book of Numbers, it's a continuation of the Hebrew people or the people of Israel. That's who we keep following. So the Old Testament, we follow the people of Israel. Now, remember in the book of Exodus, meaning they exited from Egypt, we keep following them, and it's really a cool story because we get to see what happens to them, different groups of people. Numbers, the book of Numbers takes note of their journey in the wilderness. And there's something really interesting because people are like, Numbers, why is it a book of Numbers? Well, when they get out of this bondage and they're set free and they're moving through, remember their leader Moses, this is because of a census. And the census is all about numbers, right? So they needed to see, okay, we have been through a lot. Who's here? It's really important. And let's just pause and talk about that. Why is it important to document numbers? And when I say numbers, like document who's in a particular state or who's in an area or city. Why is it important to document population?
Well, first of all, they need to know who's there, who's missing, who made it.
Right.
And I think the first census was to see how many males were 20 years old or up to a certain range who would be um able to go to war. And I think the second census had to do with the division of the land or the inheritance of the land that God had promised them.
Very good, very good. And another thing too, let me add on to that. I love that information. Another thing that we found out about these census recordings, and I might be giving away some of the answers. That's okay. Well, one of the things about these census recordings, as opposed to now in 2024, right? The census recordings did not always capture the children and the women. Okay.
Mhm.
Always capture the children and the women. And I can get into that a whole lot, patriarchy and things like that. So when we get to answering that question this week, excuse me, hold on 1 second. When we get to answering that question this week about women, I'll give you a little nugget there, that unfortunately their numbers were not included in the census. The 2 census were primarily of Israelite men 20 years and older. Okay, so we didn't capture a lot of the children and we didn't capture the ladies. So the numbers gonna be much different. Okay, so it's really interesting here. What I want you to look at, and actually if you pull out your Bible, we don't have to do it right now. You go to Numbers chapter 1. Numbers is, again, just like last week when we talked about, we did Leviticus, right? When we talked about Leviticus last week, Numbers is another book in which we don't hear a lot of sermons from. Actually, it was really interesting. My pastor preached from that same passage about the ladies and that we're going to be reading. He preached from that on Sunday. And so there are some passages, but Numbers is a census. So it's a bunch of numbers. So it's not real cool to preach numbers. So here we are if you go to Numbers chapter 1, you can look at just that, the numbers of the 12 tribes that were established, okay? And it gives the tribes. So Miss Teresa, can you see those tribes on the left-hand side?
I see them.
Yes, can you read them out for us?
Reuben, Simeon, Judah,
Mm-hmm.
Issachar, Zebulun,
Uh-huh. Ephraim.
Ephraim,
Uh-huh.
Ephraim, son of
Uh-huh.
Joseph, Manasseh, son of Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Asher, Gad, and what is this?
Naphtali.
Naphtali.
Yeah, Naphtali. And then on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, we have the tribes. So we have the 12 tribes. And then on the right-hand side, I want you to just peruse with your eyes, especially if you're watching this video, the leaders of the tribe. And of course, all the leaders of the tribe, Miss Teresa, are male or female?
All male.
Right.
I'm assuming that's what, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And the hint is, look right there, they say, son of, so and so, son of. Yeah. Yeah. So of course we know heavily patriarchal times here, but all of the leaders were male. And so I just wanted you to see that there on the left-hand side, the 12 tribes, and those were the leaders of those ancestral tribes or the heads of Israel. So when we talk about authorship, let's go right here. When we talk about authorship, here we go again. It's important to know who wrote it. But what do we keep saying about Old Testament books? Is it easy to know?
No.
No. These books are so old. We really don't know. We think that Moses wrote it. We're not really certain. We think that some religious leaders or priests may have had some hand in writing the book as well. What we do know is that the book of Numbers went through a lot of revisions around the 5th century, where the priests got a hold of, well, I shouldn't say got a hold of it, but the priests took it upon themselves to like tidy up things and try to get it into an organized fashion. However, scholars believe that the book probably took its final form after Moses was dead. So we know that can give us a clue, right? That if it took its final form after the death of Moses, even if Moses had a hand in it, he couldn't have he couldn't have written all of it, right?
Correct.
Right. So let's just pause right here. Any questions? Ms. Teresa?
No, I'm good.
Very good. Okay, before we move on, I do like how we were talking about numbers. And remember, we can always share with people. They say, numbers, what is that about? Just that, numbers. It was about the census. And correct, there were 2 censuses that were taken. In the first one, in the 2nd year after the Exodus, God told Moses to count the men, and I believe it was about 603. It's about 600,000. We'll say about 600,000 or so. And then in the second census was in the 40th year after their Exodus. 40 is a very important number. And this was just before the Israelites entered into the promised land. So a second census is taken like, okay, let's make sure who's here. Let's see who survived in the wilderness because you've been running around. And so that total was about 601,000. So actually, let me put these numbers in the chat because I know it's a lot of numbers. So I'm going to say the first census, and I just want to look at these numbers before we go on. First census was 603,550. Okay. And then the second census, after they had been roaming around for 40 years, was 601. Let's just look at those numbers, Miss Teresa. 601,730. Okay. People. Now remember, this was just men.
I was thinking when I was looking at this, I was thinking that's a whole lot of people to try to keep up with.
Ooh, very good. But isn't it awesome that they were able to, I mean, look at us in 2024. When we do the census, we have what is it?
They used to be what, census takers? Do they have that now? People used to come to your home.
They used to come to the home. I remember that. I remember that when we were in Baltimore, they would come to the home if you didn't respond, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a paper, you could fill out
Yes.
the paper. I don't know if it's computerized now or what. Probably, what's our next one? 2030?
The census.
Every 10 years, right?
I'm not even sure because I can't even remember the last time someone asked if I existed.
Let me see. Let me look at. I think census is every 10 years. The census. Um, I'm just looking it up right quick on my phone. I want to say it's yeah. Okay, I just looked it up on my phone. Yes, US population take the census every 10 years. So, oh my goodness. So the last one was 2020. I know those numbers were a mess. So 2030 will be our next one. So anyway, yeah, we have all these, what do you call it? High sophisticated ways of gaining information. But just think about that now. They were able to count all of this.
All those people.
See all those people.
And I think when they added the women and children, it went over to like over 100,000 or something, didn't it?
Bet you it did. Uh-huh. Because you got women, everybody got a whole bunch of kids.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then look at this number real quick before we move on. The first census is 603,000. Second census was 601.
Mm-hmm.
Lost some folks, but but still a large number. Okay. Still a large number. All right. Let's see what's happening in numbers. Okay, Miss Teresa, can you read the those 4 points for us?
First point, numbers covers a span of 38 years or so. The second, this marks the period of the Hebrews or Israelites in the wilderness. The third point, this group of people were known as the first generation of Hebrews after they left Egypt. Fourth point, this group of folks wandered from Mount Sinai to Kadesh. This should not have taken them 38 years.
All right, I put a little smiley face. It's interesting that actually we're gonna go to that in just a second. Let me go back. Okay. It's interesting because of their disobedience, and I'm gonna pull up a few things, and them whining to Moses, hey, we don't want to be over here anymore, just being ungrateful and really sending Moses through the ringer. Because of their disobedience and whining, it took them close to about 40 years to get to this promised plot of land that God had promised them. And if they had been obedient, these children of Israel, right? If they had been obedient, they could have got there so much faster. But once again, the Old Testament is so awesome because it also demonstrates how God sticks with the people, doesn't leave them, even though they in some essence leave God in their sense of disobedience. Mhm. And too, before we move on here, um, the Israelite people, their story is so synonymous to every human, right? Because we always do things we're not supposed to do, right? And it also shows us that we're just like them. We complain, right? We
Yes.
complain just like them. We show off just like them. We might not like the leader just like them. And however, the book of Numbers also shows us um, consequences for their actions. All right. Let's look at the text as well before we go and get some examples. Who is God in the text? So we always want to see how God shows up for the people in these Old Testament books. And if you don't mind, Miss Teresa, read that there in the blue.
This book of the Bible shows that God or Yahweh is a provider,
Mm-hmm.
is compassionate, responds to prayers, and is a just or fair God. It shows how God responds to the Israelite people when they willfully disobeyed.
He sticks by them.
Mhm.
And so we remember that, excuse me, got a sneeze that won't come out. Don't you hate that? We remember this other name of God, Yahweh, and meaning provider, because these Israelite individuals, oh my goodness, they have seen God provide for them literally when they had nothing. In the wilderness, in the dark, sending manna or food, fresh food for them to eat when there was no animals, no cows, no nothing around. And so the book of Numbers really shows that God stayed present with them. God stayed present. All right, so I'm going to pull up some examples here that I want us to look at as we outline the book of Numbers. Remember, Numbers is the census. And in the beginning, Numbers chapters 1 through 10, remember, we're chronicling these folks that came out. This is like the first generation of folks that came out of Egypt. So I want you to think about it like this, Miss Teresa. Think about it as in our families, right? Think about the first generation of folks in our family that came out of slavery,
Mhm.
right? So that would be that first group. And then that first group lived however long, right? And then they had kids, and then there was another group. Okay. So we chronicle this first group that we call them the original generation. Remember, they got all of the laws laid down. Last week we talked about the laws because God's like, look, I need y'all to come out and come out right and act right now. Y'all not gonna come out of here and be showing off. And in the second part, Numbers 10 through 21, we have the transitional generation. Okay. What's up with the transitional generation? Where are they found, Miss Teresa?
Where are they found?
Uh-huh. I mean,
You mean the
where did
ones
they
in the
go?
wilderness? Oh,
Yeah,
some in the wilderness wandering around being punished, dying off.
there you go. So this second group, the transitional group, is located, I don't want to say located, or they found themselves in the wilderness, right? Because they wandered off, complaining. Okay. And then the third section of this book is the people of Israel, and now they're in the plains of Moab. The plains of Moab, kind of like a flat area. Okay, hold on, let me get this real quick. Okay. And so Moab was a land. They also, if you all hear about the Moabites,
Mhm.
their land, there was a kingdom of people. Okay. Okay. And so they're known as a new generation that was also given a set of laws to listen. So we're going to go to the book of Numbers in just a second. We're going to talk about some women. We're going to look at Moses' sister Miriam. We're going to look at the daughters of Zelophehad, and we might kind of end up answering some of the things here. Hold on one sec. Let's go to our book. Okay, make sure I've got. All right. So I'm going to go to my computer. I'm going to pull up our Bible. And I'm going to go to Numbers. And we're going to talk about some ladies. Actually, let me put it in there. So if you want to jot down this name, Miriam, you might know some ladies named Miriam. I know a couple ladies named Miriam. And let me pull this up here. Numbers. We're going to go to Numbers, Numbers chapter 12. And Miriam, can you tell me, have you heard of Miriam, Miss Teresa?
Yeah, I was sitting here, I'm thinking that was Moses' sister.
There you go. Very good. Miriam, for those folks who are watching, Miriam is Moses' sister. And I want you to think also, a lot of the names that we see in the Bible, we might know people like right here, we're reading, chapter 12. Miriam, you might know a lady's named Miriam, Aaron. I had a next door neighbor named Aaron. Okay, so a lot of these names are still popular today. All right, let's talk a little bit about Miriam. And Miss Teresa, what's going on here? I want you to read verses 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? They asked. Hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. Now Moses was a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth.
And I'm going to do 4, 5, and 6. At once, the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, come out to the tent of meeting, all 3 of you. So the 3 of them went out. Just imagine them walking like, what you say, Lord?
I know, right? Did we hear you?
Yes, Lord. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud. He stood at the entrance to the tent and summoned Aaron and Miriam. When the 2 of them stepped forward, he said, listen to my words. Okay. What the Lord say? Go ahead.
When there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, reveal myself to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams. But this is not true of my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak face to face, clearly and not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? The anger of the Lord burned against them, and he left them. When the cloud lifted from above the tent, Miriam's skin was leprous. It became as white as snow. Aaron turned toward her and saw that she had a defiling skin disease. And he said to Moses, please, my Lord, I ask you not to hold against us the sin we have so foolishly committed. Do not let her be like a stillborn infant coming from its mother's womb with its flesh half eaten away. Oh, Jesus. So Moses cried out to the Lord, "Please, God, heal her." The Lord replied to Moses, "If her father had spit in her face, would she not have been in disgrace for 7 days? Confine her outside the camp for 7 days. After that, she can be brought back." So Miriam was confined outside the camp for 7 days, and the people did not move on until she was brought back. After that, the people left. Was this Hazel Roth? And it camped in the desert of Paran. That's scary.
Yes. Okay. I was gonna say, let's exhale. I am scared too.
Mm-mm.
I am scared too. So we have Miriam, his sister. Aaron is like Moses's right hand,
Persistent or something.
his assistant, like his right hand man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, something I want to point out before we get back to Miriam. Miriam and Aaron talked about Moses's wife,
Mm-hmm.
and Moses married a Cushite.
Mm-hmm.
Remember back in maybe like week 1 or 2, I had you all figure out where certain places were in let me see, I think we were reading in Genesis. Cush. You remember what Cush was, or where Cush was, or where Cush is now, should I say?
Where is it now? I think Moses' wife black.
Come on, that's right. Cush. Cush is modern day Ethiopia or Sudan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got you.
Put it in the chat. Ethiopia. Oh, Ethiopia, Sudan area. Okay. So Moses had a wife of some color. She probably
Mm-hmm.
nice and browner than I'm sure they had some color too, because remember, these are not European people.
Mm-hmm.
However, maybe the sister was a bit more hued than they were. Maybe she had a nice brown tan. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, why are you going out and married? Not because necessarily color, but going outside and marrying somebody else. Um, so Teresa, what does this passage, what do you pull from this passage?
Well, um, when God purposes you for something,
Mm,
and then He empowers you, that when you speak against His representative,
sure.
it's like you are actually insulting God.
So true. So true. And we see how God interacted with the people.
Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because, some people say, well, they've never seen God. But God said He spoke to Moses face to face, not in dreams, not in visions. He spoke to Moses face to face.
Clearly and not in riddles.
And what's interesting too, though, is when there's a prophet among you,
Mm.
He says, "I, the Lord, reveal myself to them in visions and in dreams. But this is not true of my servant Moses. I speak with him face to face." So,
That is so deep.
yeah, because that's like, is that a higher rank than a prophet? I'm like, okay.
No, not necessarily. He's still a prophet, but I think in this passage, what God is referring to there, There are multiple ways to speak to the individual. So yes, sometimes a prophet will get a vision, in their sleep, or and I shouldn't say a vision in your sleep, excuse me. A vision maybe during the day. They could see something. It could be a message in their dream. But God is saying, well, I don't necessarily work with him like that. I just talk to him.
Hmm. So that shows the relationship
Oh, good.
that they had.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And what's so wild about this story, I even got to read this again myself. What is so wild about this story is I love how God interacted with Moses and Aaron and Miriam's like, come out, come, come out, come out here, let me talk to you.
Hmm.
Yes, Lord, yeah, yes, yes, yes. And listen, come here, I need y'all too. Like a parent. Come here. I need y'all two
Hmm.
over here. Yes, sir. Yes. Come here. Let me talk to you. Listen to my words. And it's so frank. And I think also when we talk about God is healer, God is provider, God is kind and gracious. However, we also see characteristics of the Lord here that God can get angry.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. God can get angry.
And I would think that because God was known for just wiping some people out. So
Yes.
I would think that because of his relationship with Moses, he didn't deal with Miriam more severely
Probably.
than what he did.
Probably. Yeah.
And Aaron is on an assignment to assist Moses,
Hmm. Hmm.
but he didn't do anything to Aaron.
I
He just,
noticed that.
yeah, he didn't do anything to Aaron.
No, he didn't do anything to Aaron. And that I was reading as I was reading, I was like, hey, hold on. No, Aaron
Hmm.
did not necessarily as hold on one second. Let's go to this next chapter real quick. Aaron didn't escape always. Didn't escape any punishment. Here, let's see here. Um, okay, so yeah, all the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, if we only had died in Egypt or in the wilderness, why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they
Mm.
said to each other, we should choose a leader and go back to Egypt. Ooh, that sounds like today. But
Mm.
um, Aaron had some hard times in there too. So I bel I do raise that question with you, Teresa. Yeah, like why, Lord, didn't Aaron get a disease?
Well,
Huh.
maybe because he already killed two of his sons.
Right, right. I saw your answer. So um
Oh, what did I do?
really good question. Excellent question. That got me thinking like, why didn't Aaron get a pop? Okay, and so daughters of Zelophehad, that's going to be Numbers chapter 27, 1 through 11. That's going to be part of your discussion question. I don't want to get too much into it because I'm going to give away the answer, but you're going to talk about what those daughters were asking for. Okay. What were they asking for that was so tremendous? All right, Miss Teresa, let's go through here. The book of Numbers emphasizes a lot of things. And if you don't mind, let's read that list right here.
The holiness of God, the sinfulness of humanity, the necessity of obedience to God, the tragedy of disobedience to Yahweh's command. God is faithful to every promise. God transformed an oppressed people into a great nation.
Wow. Wow. In that exercise that we just read with Moses and Aaron, excuse me, Aaron and Miriam, and how they talked bad about his wife, right? Moses' wife. We see that all in here because they showed off. They, you're running your mouth about the prophet's wife. God wants them to be holy, and they weren't. And I'm sure them, just like us, and I'm gonna say just like myself, sometimes I'm like, oh Lord, I need to repent. Sometimes we get to running our mouths and we're not thinking, oh, maybe that's not holy conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that God is faithful. But there's a reason why God showed like he did. It's like we keep going back to that parent example. If the parent keeps letting the kids show off, and if I don't pop you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say pop you, but if I don't discipline you, then you're gonna get out here in the world and just think I can go hang out and act wild. No, you can't. No, we've got to have some type of rules. Okay. All right, I'm gonna go to Numbers chapter 20. And say right there, we're going to go to Numbers chapter 20, and this is going to be a little bit of our discussion here. But it's really interesting as you read the book of Numbers. If you get a chance, I know it's so much to read, but they go through so much, and they really don't have to go through some of the things that they do if they would have just simply paid attention. Okay, so we go to Numbers chapter 20. It reads like, when you read these stories, it's like a TV show.
Yeah, if you can make it through some of those names, man.
Right. Like a TV show. Okay, so what I want to highlight, there are a lot of characters in the book of Numbers, but one of the things that I want you to understand is when we just read, I want to say it was chapter 12 or so, these folks get really agitated. It's basically the men, right? They get really agitated with Moses. They get to whining, and they want to revolt against him. So if you see right here in verse 2, when you get to Numbers 27, you're going to hear about Korah. Okay, Korah, Korah. And Korah pulled together some men. They said that he became insolent, and let me get that off the screen, and rose up against Moses. How about? With them were 250 Israelite men, well-known community leaders who had been appointed members of the council. What they do? Look at verse 3, Miss Teresa.
They came as a group to oppose Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You have gone too far. The whole community is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is with them. Why then do you set yourselves above the Lord's assembly?"
Oh my goodness. They are wearing poor Moses out. So they want to revolt. Basically, they want to revolt against him. Said when Moses heard this, he fell face down, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Then he said to Korah and all his followers, in the morning, the Lord will show who belongs to him and who is holy, and he will have that person come near him. The man he chooses, he will cause to come near him. And I like Moses's response here. Moses could have jumped off, and told them about themselves, but he stays real cool, doesn't he?
He did.
He did. He stays real cool. And I know that he is human, because I want to scoot down to something here. Verse 15. Can you see right there, verse 15? What happened to Moses?
Then Moses became very angry and said to the Lord, do not accept their offering. I have not taken so much as a donkey from them, nor have I wronged any of them.
So he
So
is
they
getting agitated.
so they accused Moses of stealing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So back in verse 12, then Moses summoned Dathan and Abiram, and Korah and his group, they're like, isn't it enough that you have brought us out? So they're fussing with him, like, look, you brought us out of this land, you brought us over here. Why are we over here? And then verse 14, moreover, you haven't brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, or given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Do you want to treat these men like slaves? No, we're not going to come. So they're not seeing the big picture. They got to keep moving. Then they got to keep moving. And they're getting frustrated with what they see around them. They haven't made it to the promised land yet. And so in this process, they're like, okay, this is these trees don't look like what what we, this don't look like what you said. This don't look like no promised land. And Moses is like, if y'all don't be quiet, let's go. Okay, I want to get to 20. There's so much good stuff in here. Okay, Numbers 20. Okay, Numbers 20. Oh, we got a whole lot going on. We got folks dying. Let's see what happened here. Teresa, verse 1.
In the first month, the whole Israelite community arrived at the desert of Zin, and they stayed at Kadesh.
Kadesh,
There Miriam died. Oh, and was buried.
Yeah, Miriam had to go on. So Miriam didn't make it into the promised land, so she died. Now there was no water for the community, and the people gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron. So they keep quarreling with him. They keep picking and going on. Let's see here.
So that's probably what aggravated Moses, and he didn't do what God instructed him to do.
He could have been. That's very good. Let's read right here. And Moses and Aaron went from the assembly to the entrance to the tent of meeting. That's kind of like their little temple or church. And fell face down, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. What did the Lord say to Moses, Miss Teresa?
Take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community, so they and their livestock can drink.
All right, keep going.
So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock? Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff, water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them.
Wow.
All he went through,
All that work.
all that work he went through, he did get a chance to look over at it, but he
Get a
couldn't
look
enter
at it.
in. Mhm.
Isn't that something?
That is something. God in his righteous retribution. So
Yes.
that just goes to show where the scripture says God is not a respecter of persons.
And just so I know this is so much. And then Aaron dies. Aaron dies a little bit later in this chapter. So in verse 22, Aaron dies. I think and Moses is still alive. Yeah, yeah, Moses is still alive. Yeah. And they mourn for him. So it is quite an interesting um story here that we are. Let me see if I can fast forward. Any questions that you might have had? I'm going to fast forward a little bit.
No.
Okay. Numbers 27. Numbers 30. So I'm just flipping through. So if you flip through later on in the book of Numbers, let me see, trying to see when Moses dies. So we know if Moses is dying, he can't write the rest of this book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I want to show you one more thing before we go. I love to see certain things like that where we see numbers. They kept careful numbers, and this is what I just wanted to show you before we leave. And this is towards the end of the book. 72,000 cattle, 61,000 donkeys. Oh my goodness,
32,000 women who had never slept with a man.
oh my, you're right. That's a lot.
Yeah. I would think
Oh
so.
yeah, that's a lot of
32,000.
it's like a large city right there.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, just to be able to keep up with them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Probably like the daughters and things like that. Um, this was something else. Wow. Numbers 32. So yeah, one thing I do encourage students to do, it's not necessarily you don't necessarily have to read each book from cover to cover. No, but sometimes it's just really good, even for myself as well. If you thumb through the books, you just kind of see how the story progresses. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. All right. Can we
There's
get
some good stories in the Bible too.
Yes, it
Yes.
is. Just like a
Mm-hmm. Mm.
just like us. All right, Miss Teresa, any questions?
No, I don't have any.
All right. Okay, so everyone, especially if you're watching this video, I'm going to remember next week is Thanksgiving week. And actually, let me just give a few highlights here because I won't see you next week. I'll make a video for us. Next week, what's next week? Deuteronomy, right? Yeah. So
Yes.
next Thursday, of course, we will not meet, but you got Deuteronomy and also the book outline assignment. So actually, let me talk about that real quick because I won't see you. So for the book outline assignment, let me see if I can pull this up on the screen real quick. All right. Once again, I'm getting into next week because I won't see you. So for this book outline assignment, you're going to choose one Old Testament book with the section don't choose the book of Psalms. And it would be really cool if you pick a book that maybe we haven't done yet that would kind of help you in your reading and your education, maybe one of the prophets or something like that. But anyway, you could choose one book, but don't choose Psalms. And the reason why is because the book of Psalms has so many different divisions and different people wrote the Psalms. All right, so you're going to figure out who is the author or authors or who might be the author. When was it written? How is the book introduced? Okay, so you want to go into depth. What is happening in the beginning chapters? Explain. Okay, so you want to give good explanation here. Explain how the book progresses, what's happening in the middle, what happened. You know, don't need to give me every chapter, but you're going to summarize what's happening. Identify one main one main character of the book. Why is this person so significant to this book of the Bible? Why did you choose them? What are they doing? How is God working with this person? Okay. And does their character change over the course of the book? Do they, maybe they die, or maybe they get older, maybe they're a leader, maybe they move from place to place. And then lastly, how does the book end? How does it conclude? Was there a victory? Did somebody die? Did they move somewhere? Okay. So once again, you want to be very detailed with your answers. In numbers 1 through 5, pick a book, an Old Testament book, not Psalms. And it would be really good if you pick one of the books we haven't done yet, because that would really help you to learn about additional books, especially some of those that we don't get to a lot. All right. Thank you so much for your patience. We did really good. It's 8 o'clock on the dot. All right. Have a good evening.
You too, and enjoy your family. And although we know